The dusty sunburnt road stretched through a forgotten desert town where silence had learned to live, and on one sweltering afternoon, the rumble of engines shattered it like thunder. 10 leather-clad bikers from the notorious Iron Serpents gang roared into town, their chains clinking, their laughter echoing through the cracked windows of an old gas station that hadn't seen business in months. The leader, a grizzled man with tattoos snaking up his neck and a scar running from his jaw to his temple, dismounted his roaring Harley, flicked his cigarette, and barked at his crew to refuel. They had just pulled off a major heist 2 nights ago, leaving chaos in their wake, and were lying low before crossing the border. But as they laughed and cursed under the blazing sun, none of them noticed the small figure standing at the edge of the dirt road, a girl, no older than 8, barefoot, her dress torn and stained with dust, holding something that gleamed faintly in her trembling hands. When the leader turned, his laughter froze. The little girl was pointing a silver revolver directly at him. The desert wind stopped for a heartbeat as every biker reached for their weapons, but the leader, smirking, raised a hand to stop them. "Well, what do we have here?" he drawled, his voice a low growl. The girl didn't move, her wide green eyes filled not with fear but with something darker, determination, and a sorrow too heavy for her age. "Who is my father?" she demanded, her voice cracking but steady. The words hit like bullets. The bikers exchanged confused glances, some laughing nervously, others glancing toward their boss, who suddenly looked uneasy. "Put the gun down, kid," he muttered, his tone shifting. But the girl didn't blink. Her hand shook slightly, but her aim didn't falter. "My mother said one of you," she said quietly, "ruined her life. She said he was a monster who wore a snake on his jacket." The men froze. Every one of them wore the Iron Serpent emblem, a coiled snake dripping venom, stitched across their backs. The leader's jaw tightened as realization sank in. The woman he'd abandoned years ago in a town just like this, a woman named Sarah, had told him she was pregnant before he disappeared. He'd left without a word, chasing money and blood. Now the past had found him, standing 4 feet tall and armed. The men began whispering, unsure if this was some setup. One of them, a younger biker named Blaze, stepped forward and muttered, "Boss, she's just a kid," but the leader barked, "Stay back." His voice cracked for the first time in years. "What's your name, girl?" he asked, swallowing hard. "Lila," she said, her eyes never leaving his. "Lila what?" he asked, already knowing the answer that would gut him. "Lila Thompson," she said softly, and the desert seemed to sigh. Thompson, his real name, before the gang, before the crimes, before he became Reaper. His heart twisted as ghosts he thought he'd buried rose to the surface. The gang looked at him, their fearless leader suddenly pale. "You knew her mom, boss," one sneered. "Looks like your past caught up." Reaper clenched his fists, the weight of years of regret pressing on him. He took a slow step forward, but Lila cocked the hammer of the revolver, the metallic click slicing through the air like lightning. "Don't move," she hissed. "You left my mom. You hurt her. You made her cry every night until she died." A tear slid down her dirt-smudged cheek, but she didn't lower the gun. The men stood frozen, caught between disbelief and pity. Reaper's voice broke as he said, "Your mother, she's gone." The girl nodded, tears now flowing freely. "She told me to find you. She said I'd know who my father was when he couldn't look me in the eye." That cut deeper than any knife. The gang fell silent. The wind kicked up dust around them, the ghost of judgment swirling in the heat. Slowly, Reaper dropped to his knees in the dirt, his voice trembling. "Lila. I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know how to be anything but angry." His words cracked, raw and unfiltered, the mask of toughness falling away. The girl's hand shook harder now, her anger warring with confusion. "Why did you hurt her?" she cried. "Why did you leave?" Reaper's throat tightened. "Because I was a coward," he said. "Because I thought love made you weak. But I was wrong, I was the weakest man alive." His gang shifted uneasily, watching their leader unravel. One of them scoffed, "Boss, you don't gotta beg a kid for forgiveness," but before he could finish, Reaper turned and punched him so hard he dropped to the ground, spitting blood. "You shut your mouth," he growled, his voice shaking with emotion. Turning back to Lila, he opened his arms slightly, his eyes pleading. "If you have to shoot me, do it. I deserve it. But know this, I loved your mother. And I should have been there." For a long moment, the only sound was the wind whispering across the barren land. Then, Lila's grip loosened. The revolver slipped from her small hand and fell into the dirt with a dull thud. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Reaper crawled forward, tears streaming down his face, and hesitated before gently pulling her into his arms. For the first time in years, the man who had taken lives and broken hearts felt something break inside him, something that needed breaking. "I'm so sorry, Lila," he whispered. "I can't fix the past, but I swear to you, I'll never leave you again." The bikers stood in stunned silence, their brutal leader transformed into a father before their eyes. From that day on, everything changed. Reaper disbanded the Iron Serpents, sold his bike, and turned himself in for the crimes he could never outrun. When he walked into prison, the guards and inmates alike whispered that the devil himself had surrendered. But Lila visited him every month, sitting across from him with that same stubborn fire in her eyes, a reflection of the woman who had raised her and the man who was trying to redeem himself. Years later, when Reaper was finally released, a middle-aged Lila stood outside the prison gates waiting, holding 2 helmets and a rebuilt Harley painted with a new emblem, not a serpent, but a dove. As they rode off into the setting sun, the world saw only a father and daughter on a motorcycle, but in that moment, redemption roared louder than any engine ever could. Years passed after that fateful day on the desert road, and the story of the little girl who pointed a gun at a biker gang became something whispered across towns, carried by truckers and drifters like a legend no one could quite believe, but for Lila and the man once known as Reaper, it was no legend, it was the fragile, painful truth of a life rebuilt from ashes. While Reaper served his time behind bars, his once feared reputation faded into myth, replaced by something even the toughest inmates didn't understand: humility. He worked in the prison workshop, fixing broken furniture, teaching other inmates how to weld and repair engines, using the same grease-stained hands that had once stolen, fought, and killed to now create instead of destroy. Letters from Lila came every month, written in a neat, careful hand, each one a little longer than the last. At first, she wrote because her mother had asked her to forgive him, and she didn't know what forgiveness meant. But as time passed, her words grew softer, deeper, filled with the hesitant warmth of a daughter who wanted to understand the man who had given her life. "I still get angry sometimes," she wrote in one letter. "I hate that you weren't there when I needed you. But I hate more that you never got to know her. She was so kind, Dad. She loved you till the end." Those words broke him more than prison walls ever could. Meanwhile, outside those walls, Lila grew up in foster homes, then on her own, scraping through school and working night shifts at diners just like the one her mother once did. The revolver she'd once pointed at him kept locked in a box under her bed, a reminder of who she used to be, and how far she had come. She didn't hate him anymore. She hated what life had done to both of them. When Reaper was finally released, older, grayer, with scars both visible and invisible, he expected her to be long gone, living some distant life where he didn't belong. But when he walked out through those gates, there she was, standing under the same burning sky he'd first met her beneath, wearing a leather jacket with a small dove patch on the sleeve, holding 2 helmets and a smile that broke him all over again. That first ride together was silent, the wind speaking for them, carrying years of unspoken words. They didn't need to talk, the road, endless and open, did it for them. They rode from town to town, not as fugitives but as wanderers searching for pieces of their past. They visited her mother's grave first, a simple stone marked, Sarah Thompson, loved beyond words, and Lila watched as Reaper knelt beside it, his rough hands trembling, his tears falling freely into the dirt. "I never deserved her," he whispered. "Or you." Lila knelt beside him, resting her hand on his shoulder. "Then make it mean something now," she said quietly. "Be better because of her. And he did.